Okay, so this evening is our Lunar Observance Day, and it's the first Lunar Observance Days after the entering of the rains, and of course the night before the entering of the rains was the full moon, and it was a commemoration of the Buddha giving his first instruction, and on the theme of the Four Noble Truths. So I thought the Four Noble Truths, hard to wear that out. There's always something there to reflect on, investigate, practice with, and it's just so important. It's so central to this path, or to this training, or this journey that we're on. So and certainly my own experience of living with, training with Ajahn Chah, he was always circling around and emphasizing and encouraging us, that reflection on, in some way, shape, or form, these Four Noble Truths, this aspect of dukkha, the cause of dukkha, cessation of dukkha, path leading to the cessation of dukkha. And so it's, and of course there is some resistance in all of us to really investigating or using it as a tool. So we just don't want to experience it, and don't want to pay attention to it. Just try to distract ourselves. And of course that's the kind of the nature of human existence, is this constant, and it's big business, how to distract from dukkha. And of course this dukkha has many translations, because it's a very nuanced word and very nuanced term and concept. So often it's just translated as suffering, and that's just not the best translation. It's a good translation, but it's also because it is say its opposite, dukkha and sukha. Sukha is happiness. So as an opposite word, then it's a good word. But also the sense of dukkha being, like Ajahn, it can be just really ordinary and mundane. Just as Ajahn Jeff translates it as stress, and that's a good translation, because it makes it more, you realize, oh, this is more nuanced, and I got to pay more close attention to this, rather than dismissing something that's suffering, waiting for some major catastrophe to happen, and then be able to call it dukkha, and say, oh, I've got some dukkha in my life finally. So unsatisfactoriness is a good word. dis-ease is a good word. Just being uneasy, not being comfortable, not being able to really settle in and be comfortable. It's dukkha. Why is meditation so difficult? Why can't I just sit there and be comfortable? I'm not doing anything. It should be fine. But it's that dukkha. It's underlying dukkha, and so then that being able to be willing to reflect on, and that's exactly what of course Ajahn Yannikov gave the talk last week on the Dhammacakka Sutta and the Four Noble Truths, and there are these different say duties, responsibilities that one has to each of the Four Noble Truths. And this sense of dukkha is to be understood. It's to be known clearly. In the Pali, parinyayanti. Brinya is to be, you know it really well. You know something really well. Like a brinya in the Thai language. That's your degrees at university are called brinya, brinya tree, brinya toe, brinya egg. Sort of bachelor's, master's, and a doctorate, and Ajahn Chah used to tease because I think it was so many of his, especially in the early days, monks who were training with him were people who grew up in the villages around surrounding the monastery and the region, and mostly just farmers, and then these Westerners showing up with university degrees. It was kind of a big deal, and but he was always amazed at how can people so intelligent be so stupid. This is really. They've got these degrees, but they used to tease us. Yeah, well, you go and get those degrees. If you don't understand Buddhism, you don't understand the truths of Buddhism. If you really don't know it clearly, then what you end up is you've got a bachelor's degree in dukkha, and you go and get a master's, you become a master of dukkha, and instead of go on and really work hard and get a doctorate. You're doctorate with dukkha. And so that's this sense of knowing clearly is a different kind of knowing, a willingness to understand, to really to stand under the experience and penetrate it, and so that and this is when the Buddha talks about dukkha, he talks about kind of the result of dukkha. I mean, there's many different ways that he talks about it. Because sometimes he doesn't just talk about dukkha. Sometimes he talks about sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. but so there's all the different nuances. But in terms of the result of dukkha, there is this sense of it. It has two. It can either one of two results. It can end in confusion or bewilderment, or it can end in search, and a noble search, in the sense of a search for for the end, search for the understanding, search for a clear resolution to this dukkha. So this is something that we have to figure out. How do we know this so clearly, so that I'm not just running away from it, that it becomes a cause for this nourishing of this search for liberation, for freedom, for understanding, for wisdom, for peace. And so that search for peace is really to be able to say articulate that more clearly, and in order to do that, you have to be willing to pay attention to our experience. And so this is not satisfactory. This is not really making me happy and peaceful. Because there's certainly there's things that grab our attention and stimulate us in various ways, and not all negative, but they can be very pleasant, exciting even, but they don't lead to peace and knowledge and clarity. So that willingness to know clearly, to really understand, to stand under this dukkha, so that it is penetrated. And that's the function of mindfulness and willingness to cultivate mindfulness. The function of precepts, where you're getting a clear training, and of course this is where the whole path, the whole Four Noble Truths is important, because it's not just the one noble truth of dukkha and you're stuck with it. There is the encouragement to understand it and see the cause clearly, recognize the cessation, the ending, the resolution, and the path of practice leading out of dukkha. So it's this, and particularly it's on a regular basis to go back to these Four Noble Truths and really contemplate them as a structure for framing our practice and our interest in the practice, and whether we're monastics or we're lay people. And of course, particularly, the occasion is appropriate because it's the beginning of the rains retreats. Traditionally, it's a period of practice. I think next week the whole community will be on kind of a fuller practice period. So, and then then after that, every couple of weeks, different members of the community have an opportunity to be in solitary retreats, and the rest of the community will keep a schedule going. But that, traditionally, the rains retreat is a time of training and cultivating. So part of that cultivation and training is having a framework for that, and coming back to Four Noble Truths. It's such an important foundation, and the cause of dukkha as is the Buddha points to tanha, and as tanha as desire, craving is another translation. Literally, tanha means thirst. So it's like a compulsive drive, a thirst, thirsting after some kind of relief. And again, when it's not understood, when it's not seen clearly, then um, it gets messed up, and you end up having our desires directed to things that are truly not satisfying, not settling, not peaceful, not leading to clarity, not facilitating the search for peace. And the Buddha points to the different kinds of craving. When we chant the Sutta Gama Tanha, Bhava Tanha, Vibhava Tanha, craving for sensuality, which is fairly straightforward. There's this, some kind of stimulation, excitement, scratch that itch somehow. Whether it's sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, ideas, thoughts, moods, um, seeking outwards. The Bhavadhana, Vibhavadhana, those are the kind of a bit more refined, and much more around the sense of identification of self, me. This is me. This is mine. This is who I am. And so that craving to be successful, be recognized, be known, have affirmation, be affirmed, and that can just manifest in all sorts of ways. And Vibhavadana, desire for the pushing away, not wanting, no, I don't like this, I don't want it, it shouldn't be this way. The sense of I shouldn't be this way, the world shouldn't be this way, and it can be really blatant, and it can be really intelligently framed, and it still hurts. So that sense of being, paying attention to this, those compulsive drives, that thirst for something. As if I just got this way, I just got this thing, or this way I got my, then I'd be happy. Because that's it's the nature of craving, is that me somewhere else, with something, with some other person, some other situation, some other time, finally happy. And it doesn't work that way. This sense of craving. Another aspect of craving, or maybe a bit more refined, or certainly in the in the iterate, or the expansion of, because the teaching the Buddha gives on Four Noble Truths is expanded in the dependent origination, this cycle of causal processes that lead to dukkha, and tanha, then upadana. Upadana is sort of craving, clinging, and that sense of the but again, there's this, you're looking at, that holding tight, clinging, grasping is another translation, but you're the Buddha is always trying to balance things. Anybody who's practiced teaching is certainly Ajahn Chah. That sense of Dhamma, the nature of Dhamma is is balance, or point of balance. And so that the, say, the opposite of there's the holding that leads to suffering is also holding that leads to progress on the path, that leads to development. And it's the same root of the word upadana, and then there's samadana. So that's like the root is it means to take or to seize, and then but it's like taking up or undertaking. Like you just took the precepts, and the verb in the precepts is samadhiyami. It's I don't know. I don't know my Pali, but it's whatever declension it is, a conjugation of a verb that makes it doing something. But undertaking, I undertake this. I determine. So to take up a practice, a training, a perspective, you have to have that. It's a positive way of directing our attention, so that it brings great benefit to ourselves and to the practice. You have to use, and of course it requires interest. So you're taking up the training, taking up the reflection, taking up the investigation, taking up and then you need to hold it. Or the image that the Buddha gives for, kind of like hold. There's a just right quality of holding that's not too tight and not too loose. And he says it's like the holding of a tiny chick, like a little baby bird, and you want to hold it so that it doesn't just sort of fly away or just drop on the ground. But you can't hold it too tightly; you crush it. So the same in the practice, in the meditation, you want to take up your object of meditation so that it's being held firmly, but not so tightly that you're squelching enthusiasm and interest, because you need to sustain that effort. You need to sustain the interest. You need to sustain the staying with the object. So staying with, being able to stay with that noble search. It's a search for peace. It's both on a long-term trajectory, but it's also just that this in a moment-to-moment quality of how do we hold things? How do we hold our view? How do we hold our experience of dis-ease or discontent? Because there's always these, especially, if everybody's content with 104-degree temperatures, I don't know. That's beyond me. But you can't. What's the point of complaining and grumbling and getting restless because of it? It is what it is. But how do we hold it? And so that it's quite important to keep that sense of, because if you cling too tightly, that attachment, then it turns into these. It reverts to these different kinds of unwholesome desire. But whereas the that skillful undertaking, holding up, it really brings clarity and steadiness to the mind, because the nature of the mind, it moves so quickly. And it's not like the body. The body, I mean, you have to takes these are four elements. They're kind of heavy and clunky. Takes a bit for them to move. Um, Mind is just so quick sometimes, and we don't catch it. So that's how do we hold it in a way that we can see more clearly? We can. So that's this, the relationship to and say the duty that the Buddha gave to that truth of the cause of dukkha. It's to be abandoned. It's to be relinquished. So abandoning that craving, abandoning the clinging, abandoning the unskillful desires, unwholesome desire process that kind of taints the experience of, because in reality, everything's a pretty blank slate until we until we project onto us, like in today in our kind of sutta class. There's referencing the world, or the all, because it can be held up as a very refined, spiritual, like, being one with the world, one with the all, is the great expansive. And but then what the Buddha says, what is the all? And it's, what is the world? And it's just the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. And then is like as in the fire sermon which we recited a couple of days ago. It's just the eye and the sights and sound, all the sense bases, and this sense contact and the feeling that arises, it gets tainted by greed, by hatred, by delusion, and when that happens, it leads to dukkha, and that's it's an early sutta that the Buddha gave in his dispensation, and it was a large group of former fire worshippers, and it said 1,000, which is just, those are really a lot, and they were all awakened by the end of that. So that sense of really seeing, oh yeah, I'm doing this to myself. I don't need to. I can search for an ending of dukkha rather than search for adding to the dukkha. It's usually when when we search, it's usually who's to blame. So, who's doing this to me? So well, actually, closer to home. Cessation of dukkha is the ending of dukkha, the cessation, the ending, the relief, the release from dukkha. And the Buddha points that the duty that we have toward this truth, because it is our responsibility, or how do we relate to it? It's to be realized. How do we realize this? How do we make it real? So that that experience of the ending of dukkha. Another to me very important point that a Thai scholar and teacher, highly respected, Prapayutto, points to the sense of the word in Pali is nirodha, and that and cessation is a ending, or saying those are good enough translations. But he said another translation that is oftentimes not so emphasized, or it's another angle of how to translate it, is non-arising. So something, especially in terms of practice, paying attention to the non-arising of dukkha. It's a different way of directing attention, rather than, because we can spend a lot of time chasing our dukkha just to stamp it out, and we're basically feeding the same cycle. Whereas that paying attention to the non-arising of dukkha, it's like, if you're in a natural setting, it comes, something like at a lake, a smallish lake, early morning. Saying just in nature, it's very still. Very still, very calm. There's not a lot of birds aren't out yet. Maybe animals aren't out yet. The wind is not blowing, and that lake is incredibly still and clear. The mind is like that as well. And there is this non-arising that is there already. How do we pay attention to it? Where it's that moment before we add greed, hatred, and delusion, the moment before we add that desire and clinging, the moment before we add tanha and upadana. So there is this opportunity to experience. So learning how to realize that, to make that real, and to turn attention in that way, and so that each in-breath, each out-breath, the feeling of the body, the feeling of the heart, and so that's it's an important aspect of training, and again, sort of seeing these Four Noble Truths as an integral process that we have to attune ourselves to in order to really taste the flavor of the Buddha's teachings, to realize the flavor of it. And that's one of the things the Buddha says. The flavor of the Dhamma is, he says, vimutti, is freedom. That's its flavor. That's its taste. Paying attention to that taste, that flavor. And of course, the last noble truth is the path leading to the ending of dukkha. It's a way of practice, a way of training, things that the causes and conditions that we can put in that naturally bring the mind to a place of peace, of clarity. And it is, this is a Noble Eightfold Path. And it is interesting that they, again, say the nature of the experience, or the flavor of the experience of the Eightfold Path is one of happiness and well-being. Just have right view, right action, right view, right intention, and that sense of bright. The mind is bright. It's clear. It's seeing things. A tremendous sense of happiness and well-being. Right speech, right action, right livelihood. I mean, this all sort of brings a sense of happiness and well-being. So, say words that lead to harmony and well-being, or action that is harmless, and this just is something beautiful that we bring into being and cultivate, and that is I say the duty that we have to the path is to is cultivate or develop Bhavavedi. But Bhavavedi is also, there has this bringing into being. And this has that same root of say, the Bhavatana, the being, and Bhavavedi, bringing into being. So that cultivation, development has a very positive connotation. And so we bring into being those qualities that nourish the path, and nourish the Dhamma, and nourish the truth. And there's a sense of, this is satisfying. This is really, it can sustain itself because of the well-being that is being cultivated. If the path is sort of, practice feels like a burden and it's kind of dreary and kind of onerous kind of thing that we're doing, then that's a sign we're not holding it rightly and picking it up correctly, because it is that this happiness is intrinsic to the fruit of the practice, and certainly with the right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. I mean, those are that's the basic definition of right effort is to increase the wholesome and skillful and beautiful, and to decrease the unwholesome, the unskillful, the unfruitful, and the more the mindful we are, the more steady the mind, the more stable, clear, and the samadhi itself. I mean, this is more and more refined qualities of happiness and well-being. So that these Four Noble Truths, it is really, it is really important to keep returning to it, and just because we've memorized it doesn't necessarily mean we've understood it. And so making the knowledge that we have into a practice that nourishes those roots of that search for peace, that search for clarity, and search for freedom from discontent and dis-ease. So I'll offer that for reflection this evening.